My guy, how you doing?
Every time we log on, just for that first 2 or 3 seconds, I just want to laugh for some reason. I don't even know why.
Let
Joe,
me
you bring joy to my heart, Joe. You make me smile. I just get excited when I see you.
Oh, well, we got to
'Cause
get
I'm
you
just
out more
waiting.
then, man, because if that does it, we got to get you out, man. I'm fired up today, people.
I know, I'm
Let's
waiting.
go. I will tell you this. So I had a couple things happen to me but first of all, it's alumni weekend. So there are alumni. I mean, I drove in last night. We had track meet last night, and I drove in. There was alumni basketball games. I'm going to tell you right now, alumni weekend in Fall Creek, Wisconsin. If you just want to come hang out with an incredible community, you come here. This place is bananas over alumni weekend. And we have people coming in from years ago that just still want to play basketball because they were so connected to it. And people, it's intense. Okay. My son was playing last night. You would have thought it was a sectional final. He's out driving over. It was like, I don't know if I've seen him play that hard. Maybe if you would have played that hard more, you got more playing time. Here's the thing. He just kept going, man. It was great. And everybody was jacked up. I only got to see like the last part of the last game of the night, and they were spent, but they were still flying all over. And then I look around and I see people that I haven't seen in years that have come back. And just to see the look on their faces, Jimmy, I will tell you, man, there is something about this place. And I'm guessing that it happens in other places where you get alumni to come back. It was mind-boggling to see the faces and the enjoyment and the pride that happens for a basketball tournament. Man, and today's more stuff. They have volleyball today. I'm here. I was here at 6:00 I was walking to work and doing that kind of stuff. But there are people getting ready for these people. I mean, it's going to be crazy good today. So man, what a day. It's so cool. So it's been a good start to me last night, long day, but at the same time, this community, never ceases to amaze me. And when you have so much pride, and people, I'm telling you, there's pride in every community in America. Let's be honest about that. You just got to find it. And when you find it, it's special beyond measure. And I felt that last night. So very cool.
You know how I know it was so special for you?
Why?
Because you said it was bananas here.
Jimmy, I'm not even joking, man. It was bananas.
All the adjectives in the world to describe the feeling and emotions, and you use the word bananas.
You look, I don't need any judgment from you right now. This is not why we jumped on this thing to get judgment from. I don't need that. Don't give me a judgment, Jimmy. I don't need that. It's early on a Saturday morning. It's been 80 degrees for a week. You would have thought that people would have been. It was 80 degrees this week, Jimmy. Guess what's going to happen next week, Jimmy? It's going to snow. I mean, seriously, exactly. Wisconsin, your weather's completely hammered. Figure it out, Wisconsin. Figure it out.
Wisconsin is bananas right now.
Bananas Joe, now, man. It's just bananas.
I also noticed something else when we got on this morning. How is it possible that in 3 days down in the South, I come home and I look like this?
You got a light
issue,
bro.
The sun must have been bright because I worked on my tan this weekend or something. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, you got a light.
I just got on. The first thing I laughed, I'm like, oh my God, look how much sun I got in 3 days. Crazy.
Right? Isn't that something? It's good. Well, I'm telling you, man. What I have been so I also did you worked with our district administration aspiring superintendents academy a couple weeks ago in Chicago, and you came in, did a great job, and that was fun, and thank you for doing that. But we had our second set this week. It was the online piece, the virtual piece. I'm going to tell you, man, if we're thinking about the idea that, what's the next level leadership, like who's coming in, who's going to be in the superintendent role, out the 20 plus people we've got in our cohort, they are going to be superintendents, and they are going to be awesome. There are great leaders across the country, and when we can give them an opportunity to lead, it's going to be amazing. So I had so much fun. Amy Dujan at DA runs a phenomenal program, and I'm just really excited to be part of it. And our cohort was fantastic. You got a chance to meet them, but I love leaning in. and thinking about what they're thinking about. And I think one of the things that happens when I do that is it makes me rethink things that I've done for so long that I don't even think about anymore. And I think we got to get ourselves to a situation where we do that more often as leaders, is the reflect and grow piece of it. Sometimes we'll reflect on it and just say, oh yeah, that's what we did. That's what we used to do. But when we're thrown into a situation where we have to reflect on what we've done, but then also help people to get better so they don't repeat history, now it makes us better in our job as well along the way. So I think any opportunity that we as veteran leaders in this space can help out people who are aspiring, who may not have, who won't have to go through the stuff that we had to go through to get here. Well, I think it's incumbent upon us to do that. And I know that you're doing that as well.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I had the same feeling in Arkansas here the last few days. And that is, they also, a lot of districts do this, right? They have their own kind of grow their own programs, leadership academies, those who are aspiring leaders in their districts to continue to grow their own. And it was so awesome to see how many people were involved and invested. Same type of thing, right? Just feeling really good about, hey, this is awesome. The fact that we have this many people who are still aspiring for leadership roles, despite the reality of how grueling the job can be. Yeah. There's still something about school leadership. And I still think, just like when people decide to become a teacher or whether they decide to become a principal or a superintendent, is I still think these individuals have this mindset that they want to make a greater impact, right? And then they know that's one way they can do it. And so, Joe, when you were saying that, I was thinking about how important it is. There's just something about coming together with a group of people, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing I think I would say to anyone listening is that how are we being intentional bringing groups of people together? Because it is energizing, right? When you just said it, right? You go into a room, you start talking about things, and then just like that, it just starts clicking and you start thinking, right. Yes, I used to do that. Why did I stop doing that? Right. I know that. Why am I not doing that? Oh, I feel good. Oh, look, it validates. We're talking about the same types of things. Or look, I say something, I think something, and now somebody challenges that thinking, and not even without like confrontational challenge, but just has a different take on it. And all of a sudden it influences us. And so it's a reminder in our roles in leadership. I think the key is that we're still all teachers, right? I mean, I think we see it through the heart of a teacher and we go in with that lens that we're still in a teaching and learning profession, that we too have a responsibility to continue learning. So how are we intentionally creating these pockets in our organizations where people can come together and spend some time really just kind of energizing one another? Yeah. I know the people who work as leadership coaches often share with me one of the things they love about it is that they go into a building, they're observing other leaders, they're learning while they're observing, they're reflecting while they're observing, and they're also asking themselves this question: am I about ready to share some insight with this leader? And then I have to reflect, am I doing the same thing in my own building? And right. So one of the things I love about it is, I think most people will tell you, is that they go back to their buildings and they're even more excited about the job. And I think that's one of the things about coaching. That's why I think every leader in this country deserves a coach. Every athlete has a coach. The top CEOs in this country have a coach. But there's something about educators that, for whatever reason, I feel like we do a pretty good job of investing in our teachers. I don't think we do a very good job of investing in our administrators across the board, right? Whether that's a special ed director, an HR director, a business manager. I mean, I think it's this whole thing. Well, you're in administration, you should know what you're doing already. Or, there's something, I don't know what it is, but there's something there that people, either for whatever reason, don't see the value in that. And, in general, certainly there are, obviously, or we wouldn't be employed, right? We wouldn't have a job. But it should be that way. There's the discrepancy again, right? There's the equity issue, is that why are some districts able to support their leaders and others either choose not to or don't even feel like they need it, right? Don't feel like they need it. And I'll say this, and this is the last thing I'll say, and I'll turn it back over to you, but I do wonder sometimes, again, just in my experience, I wonder sometimes it's because people do feel they're vulnerable by allowing someone to come in and watch them. There's something about, well, I don't want people to really know what I'm doing, because what if they share things that about me that I'm not doing well? And so it does take a lot of courage. There's no doubt about it. But this is what we ask teachers and kids to do every day, right? We ask kids to be vulnerable. We ask teachers to be vulnerable. But yet, for some reason, there are still many leaders in this country who don't feel like they need help or realize it, but just don't want to admit it. So.
Right. Or they're afraid to ask. And I think that happens more often than not, is they're afraid to ask because they've been placed into a leadership position and someone's trusted them to lead at the same time. Then that makes them feel like they need to be, all things to all people. And that's where the problem comes in. So sometimes the coaching part of it is really great, just to kind of pull people back in terms of wanting to go too fast or thinking about what happened. Or you mentioned, when we were with our group, thinking about what a level 10 issue is versus a level 1 issue and how you can kind of regulate your momentum along the way. One thing that I would not push back on you, but at the same time, I want leaders to think about is when you get groups of people together and you can talk about some of the great things that are happening, and then that really brings back some of the stuff that you had been doing that you really liked, and you're thinking, my goodness, I can't believe we stopped doing that. A lot of the pitfalls that leaders run into at that point is they then start to bring that stuff back, which is then placed on top of the stuff that they're already doing, which then puts them in a situation where the people that they're leading are now overwhelmed. And so we as coaches have to be in a situation where we can help people kind of regulate what that momentum looks like so we don't overwhelm the people that we serve. Because we can all have a ton of great ideas, but if those great ideas come to us working in a small group and then we go back to our office where we're just sitting in our office alone with 4 walls thinking about how we can make it better for other people, yet not really thinking about what they're doing in that moment, now all of a sudden we're going to overwhelm them with good intention. We have good intentions doing it, but we're going to overwhelm them because they're already at a breaking point. So it's great to get excited about stuff that you have done in the past and wanting to bring that stuff back. But at the same time, when we think about that, how are we re-implementing things to make sure that we don't overwhelm the people that we've already implemented a ton of stuff to? And I really think that we do that unconsciously, right? But sometimes it's a lot. It's because we get too far removed from the space that we lead, and that's okay. But you got to find a way to be still connected to that space so you can make decisions for that space. You can't be in every space all the time, but that does not preclude you from having conversations about what that space looks like and how we can help it get better. So I just don't want leaders to overwhelm just because they got together with a group and they came back and they thought, my God, I'll tell you, I've told people this before. If after a break you come back from a break and you've had time to reflect, you've had time to sit down with other people, and you come back and your first meeting with your staff after you came back from this break or from this conference is like, I read this really great book. You better know how to duck really fast or run really fast because something's coming at you. They're already at the spot where they're overwhelmed. So be careful about how you re-implement some of the great things, even though you know that they're great, because you don't want to overwhelm the people who are literally working as hard as they possibly can just to get through the day sometimes.
So, Joe, why do you think it is then? So think about this for a second. So if we did a practice that we believe was a good practice, okay, whatever that is, whether it's a routine or it becomes embedded in our culture, but then for some reason at some point we stop doing that. The question is why? Yeah. Is it because we just began to add other things onto our plate, and therefore at some point, because we went and decided to do something different or something new, we kind of left that behind? Is that the reason? Or is it because that in that process, somewhere along the line, many leaders are forward thinkers. And so they're always in their mind, maybe looking to get better. They're looking to improve. And so maybe they did something really well, and maybe they thought, we want to keep doing that, but we're going to tweak it, or we're going to make one more adjustment. But then over time, it kind of goes away from it. So the question is, what's causing that? And then how do we prevent ourselves from doing that? And it's kind of like the idea, right? It's kind of like, I'm sure you'll agree with this, but it's like ending a school year. And what would happen if we said, hey, instead of looking at what we're going to do different next year, what if we just keep doing the same thing, but we just keep doing it better?
Yeah.
Right? Why is it because it's part of our DNA? Is it because we feel the pressure? Is it because there are sometimes mandates or expectations or requirements or whatever it is that we don't have any control over, and or probably a blend of all that? But I do think that is an issue for us, right? That we walk away from something knowing it was a good practice. Or maybe do we just get bored and we just want to go do something different? I don't know. Maybe it's a combination of all those things, but I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it probably is a little combination. I don't think we get bored and then try to do and just figure. I think there's always an impetus for change in terms of, in some regard, and a lot of times, so the impetus for change often comes in a couple different levels. The first impetus for change comes because things aren't going well. The second impetus for change comes because somebody told us we need to do something different because they believe things aren't going well or things need to be changed. They may know or not know what's going on in that space, but they may decide that needs to be a change, and then we have to react to that change. So I think what you had mentioned was, do we just add on? So I think there are two components to that. The first is, do we choose to add on to things, and we can control that piece of it. But the second piece is, has something been added to us out of our control? And then when something is added to us from a leadership lens, if somebody from the state level or from the federal level or whatever the case may be says that we need to do this thing, that's going to take the place of something else, or it's going to be piled onto something else. And if that thing takes priority over the things that was actually happening, then it gets pushed off to the side, and then you got to figure out a way to bring it back. So when we talked when you were with our group in Chicago, the one thing that we talked about, I thought that kind of hit me the most was, what are we getting down to? What is our essential framework in terms of what are the non-negotiables of who we are and what we believe to be true? And these are the pieces. Now, if you want to add on anything beyond what we've established as this is what we're going to do, that's on you. But every time that we start thinking about how we're going to get better, we're going to get better in these 3 or 4 particular areas that we've all established. Anything else is on you. But me as the leader, I'm always coming back to those 3 core components. And I'm going to tell you, if there is something new, how that's going to enhance those 3 components and maybe be able to take something off their plate. The other thing that we have to understand about the people that we work with, and I can't speak for people across the country, but I can speak for the people that I work with. They have so much pride in the work that they do. They have so much pride in the work that they've done that they believe that everything is essential because they've spent so much time making it essential, making it great for kids. So when we start adding stuff onto them and telling them, we can say out loud, I can say out loud to a group, we just need to, this is the priority. This other stuff needs to be pushed. Please don't do all that stuff. It's too much on your plate. You need to remove something. You need to take something off their plate. They'll say in a meeting, that sounds great, but then they'll go back and they'll do the same stuff because they think it has tremendous value because they spent so much time building it. And I can't fault them for that because they worked so hard to create it. If you work so hard to build, let's say you build a house by yourself, man, like you build the whole thing. And then all of a sudden you're like, you know what? We're going to think about moving at that point. You've spent so much time on that house. It's going to be harder for you to move on to something else because you've invested everything that, not just money. I mean, you spent all your time building everything in that house. And then we're all like, oh, we got to move somewhere else. It's going to be a harder move than if you just pick something up and say, well, I'm going to live here for a little bit and then move on to something else, moving on, right? If you invest like our teachers do, like our staff members do, if they invest fully into kids that are there and fully in the processes that we've established for them, it's going to be much harder for them to let those go for something new that comes up. So we got to be really cognizant about coming back to those 3 core areas or those 4 core areas or whatever you've collectively established so they can see a connection to what you're already doing and where you're going, as opposed to saying something like, well, you know what, this is just something new. Or what's even worse is when they say, we used to do this 20 years ago. We just called it something different, right? So we got to be really cognizant about what they're going through in this time too.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking and processing what you're just saying, and a couple things came to my mind. Is one of the things, completely agree with you when you look at in terms of how are we identifying those essentials or what is important to our community. right? So the first thing I go to is, well, what process are we using to make sure that everybody has some sort of voice in that process? So here are the challenges for leadership, right? Let's just own the challenges. So we can recognize that we need to establish some core values, a framework. What are those essentials? Whatever, however you want to look at it. Think of the guaranteed and viable curriculum. Think of what are the core standards, the power standards, whatever that is that we can say to our community, these are the things that we value as a school community, right? So we're being transparent, we're being clear. So the challenges then for leadership is what is the process that we're using to make sure that everybody is a part of that everybody's invested in that? Then how do we manage those individuals that for whatever reason do not agree with that? Yeah. Right? So that's a process in itself. We don't want to create a division. We don't want to leave them behind. But at some point, to me, the skill is then how do you influence people? What's the conversation look like? How do you get people to want to be a part of it? Why do they not want to be a part of it? So those are all the things that are real that a lot of our leaders are having to face when they walk into the profession, especially think about a new principal walking into an organization, especially one that has been clearly established over a long period of time. And look at all the things that impact that transition. How long was the leader there before them? Was the leader before them admired? Was the leader before them not admired? There's all these complications, right? There's all this history. And so I don't say that to get people to think, oh my God, this job's impossible. I say it to say, hey, we got to go in with our eyes wide open and begin to recognize. So where is the starting point? Where's our entry point, right? Where does that begin? And again, you know, what we're going to say here is you got to understand people. You got to know their history. You got to know their stories. You got to understand why they behave the way they behave. And so when you were saying that, what I was going to say also was, I completely agree with you. And it doesn't matter whether it's a teacher librarian, whether it's a secretary, whether it's just whether it's a teacher, whether it's a paraeducator, whether it's one of us in terms of administration. But I do say this. I do worry, though, there's still people that will play it both ways. Mm-hmm. Right. And what I mean by that is I agree with you that if this is important to me, and it is essential, and I have a history and I've done it, and you give me permission to do it. But then you say, but you can also do other things if you want, but that's on you. But we're doing this. If it's true that teachers will still keep doing this other stuff, well, then you can't turn around and blame administration that you feel overwhelmed and you're putting too much on us. That's not fair, right? That's not right to do that to people. And we can do the same thing to our superintendents. And I mean, let's just be honest. We're all in the same game. So to me, it still goes back to this. Have we created a culture where people can truly have dialogue about what they're feeling, why they're feeling what they're feeling? And at the end of the day, as long as we're reflecting and supporting one another and realizing, look, if you're willing to listen to me say to you, look, I'm with you, but I'm going to ask you, what is it you want me to do when I've already given you permission and then you continue to do this and then you come back and tell me you're tired, exhausted, overwhelmed. I've given you permission not to do that. And we've had the conversation and you've been very clear why that's important to you. But at some point, you've got to make a decision. Your health is not good, right? It is not good to feel that stress. So I think that's the challenge in leadership because there are so many people that we have to influence. We have 80 staff, 120 staff, 200 staff. And how many do they have? One. They have one person that they have to figure out. I have to figure out Joe Gianfilippo. He's my leader. I have to figure out what it is. So I know what he wants from me. I know what he expects. I know what he shares. I love his passion. I love all this. But then you got to figure out who I am and all 110 of my colleagues, right? And I think that's what I love about leadership. And I think that's where we get better. We just continue to figure it out because it all comes back to why do people behave the way they behave. So it's the psychology there, that whole thing. But I love it, right? If you love that challenge and you love trying to figure those things out and being able to influence, because I do think that's what the most effective leaders do. They just have an ability to influence people and organizations and systems, right? They really do. And so I think that's the thing that I always kind of go back to is how challenging the job is. And I think that's why we do what we do, Joe, is because we recognize that we've been through it. We're still going through it, or you're still going through it. I'm not, but we know it, but we see it, right? Even in the people we work with. So, you know, just in the last 3 days, here's what I observed. I observed leaders managing so much more than leading. I see managers who are getting stuck and are not visible. I see leaders saying to me, Jimmy, I'm really struggling with, I don't know what to do when I don't agree with something, right? In other words, I get a mandate. I'm expected to lead something that I do not believe in. How do I find that balance? I struggle with it. Jimmy, I don't believe in giving Teacher of the Month recognitions, but yet I'm forced to have to do it, right? Jimmy, I don't believe, right? And so there's all these things that they struggle with. And that's the part where we need to support our leaders, because they feel alone. They feel like they don't know what to do. And so when they don't know what to do, they just hesitate. It's almost like they're frozen. They just get stuck, right? I don't know what to do. It's like because I know that if I do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing, it's coming at me 100 miles an hour, and I'm going to beat up pretty bad.
The other side.
So God bless you, leaders. Thank you for what you do, because we know how difficult it is. And Carolyn, thank you for your comments. And, we share those things because we empathize with you. And this is why we go back and saying, how are we going to give our people some help, right? They're doing the best they can. We can't just keep giving them the keys, people. So I'm reaching out to leaders and saying, please invest in your leaders. We don't care what it looks like, but invest in those leaders in some capacity.
Right.
So.
Well, you mentioned, and again, we want to keep coming. Of course, we at some point we always come back to where relationships, how important relationships are, and at the same time when we say that, we've got to be able to give you some tools to be able to do that. Again, it's like telling me that I need to exercise. I'm not dumb. I know I need to exercise, but until you give me a way to get
especially after this week, because I know what happened this week. I know you stepped on that scale. You stepped on that scale. I don't know why you stepped on that scale. You shouldn't have stepped on that scale.
Listen, Jimmy.
How many times have I told you not to step on that scale? And then you know what you did? You cut out sugar for 2 days. Then you went on the road and you ate 3 pizzas in the car on the way to the trip.
That's like it's like you were sitting right next to me. Why do you got to do this? You don't have to bring it out publicly, Jimmy. My gosh. I mean, seriously. Yeah, I stepped on a scale. Yeah, I wasn't happy with what I thought.
This is the same guy that's taking pictures of Casey's gas station and sending it to you and going, look what I'm having today, Joe.
Okay. So yeah, again, I gotta have, and I did. I looked at him like, so you take a look at yourself and you think, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? So you start doing things just a little bit differently, and then you get some momentum. And of course, even this week, getting a little bit momentum and feeling a little bit better makes you want to do it a little bit more. Now, if I see a pizza in front of me, I'm gonna crush it. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm gonna crush it. Don't. But then you just gotta avoid where to get pizza. So we got to figure out ways to help people build relationships. And here's the thing. Here's the thing. I think a lot of times what ends up happening with us, and we've said it before, we go and do, and you get locked into the day where you don't get a chance to actually make the connection. And honestly, trying to go out and make a connection with every person in this building on a daily basis is probably not the best way to do it. Because now I'm surfacing everything. So I try to break up the day. I try to break up the week. If I'm here for the full week, where am I spending the majority of my time? And not only where am I spending the majority of my time, but am I actually writing that down and knowing where I spend the majority of my time? It's like the exercise thing, man. I can exercise and say, well, I did like 5 push-ups last week sometime. I don't remember when I did it, but I did it. And that's like saying, you know what? I went to the elementary school last time. I don't remember where I was or what I was doing, but I did it. If we're going to be able to see momentum, a lot of times we got to chart kind of the things that we've done so we don't repeat history, but also can influence the way that we lead in the future. If that means that, I want to spend Monday and Thursday in the elementary school because I know that I can get some, more momentum there. And then Tuesday and Friday in the high school and Monday in the middle school or whatever you want to do, give yourself license to make sure that not only that you do it, but reflect on what it looked like so you can do it better the next time. Instead of just checking it off and saying that you did it, right? How did it make you feel? What did you like? What was the connection that you made? When are you going to follow up on something? We don't do that nearly enough because we're always just going to the next thing. And it makes me nuts that we can't figure out a way. And I'm in this boat too. People, please understand that there are times you just can't figure it out. Like you can't figure it. You blink an eye and it's 2:30. And you're thinking, what in the heck have I done all day? I know I did stuff, but what did I do? So sometimes I'll just use voice recording. Honestly, I do. I just use a voice recorder on my phone and I just do a quick reflection on the day. It takes a minute. But guess what? When I come back the next day and I can listen to it for a minute, it changes the way that it changes my outlook on the day, because I may have forgotten that I was in the elementary school yesterday because of all the stuff that happened. Or I may have forgotten the fact that I haven't been in the elementary school for 4 days. If I can just do a quick reflection, it helps the conversation moving forward. But we don't do it. Again, it comes back to, are we willing to be coached? Are we willing to look at practice? And are we willing to kind of be vulnerable with ourselves to move ourselves forward so we can help other people?
Joe, when you were talking about the voice recording and so forth, it took me back to, so let's go all the way back to the early 90s, right? I'm coaching basketball, and my mentor coach, I watch him, and he was very well known for this, is he would actually carry this little recorder, right? This little recorder. And so during the basketball games, he would literally say, like, need to talk to Tom about boxing out on the free throws, right? Because if not, he's not going to remember everything from the game. He would remember one or two things, and that would be the focus. But there was all these little details. He was coaching, but it was a reminder to him to have to circle back to coach. So that's how he did it, right? Yeah. And it's so funny because I would watch this and I would watch this. And I still remember going to Best Buy and buying this little dictaphone that ran on some AAA batteries. And it had little mailboxes that was digital, so I could record it, delete it, record it. And I remember all day long, I'd walk down the hallway and I'd leave myself a message. I'd see something, I'd remind myself a reminder. And then I would listen to it in the car ride home on my commute home. And then I'd listen to it on the way in. And I could make sure that I would stay organized that way. And then eventually, obviously, with technology, those things began to improve. And I remember being at SAI and talking about that. The reason I just remember this, because like a couple months ago, somebody walked up and says, hey, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember way back when I first see, he goes, I still remember I leaving your session and getting one of those dictaphones. It was the best thing I ever did because it really helped me stay organized. It's really funny. I think, oh my God, that was so long ago. But, you know, there are tools today that we can use on our phone and so forth. And even Boxer's great, right? The memo notes in Boxer is a great way just to leave ourselves reminders and so forth. So I was just thinking about that when you were saying it. But here's what I'm going to say in your thoughts, and then I'll let you close it out today. Okay. But as you were just talking through all that, I was thinking this. All the things, I liked how you talked about, hey, I've got to sit down and think, what is my week going to look like? What is my day going to look like? So I need to be strategic. I need to be intentional, but I also need to kind of establish some sort of routine. That's kind of what I heard you saying, a little bit of a routine and almost chunking it a little bit. And don't try to do everything. But again, It's like we say, I don't need to be in the classrooms every day, but I need to be in the classrooms enough so they think I'm in there every day, right? It's not realistic that you're going to say, that's why I hate, like I saw something recently coming back from holiday break. This is a few months ago that says, hey, I challenge you principals that try to get into every classroom every day, every day this week. I'm like, why? So you don't show up again until May? That's not going to do any good. Everybody knows what you're doing. Hell, I'd rather have you show up in my classroom once every 2 weeks. But if you do it every 2 weeks consistently throughout the year, I'll kind of think you're in there all the time. And so part of it is just that reminder not to do these things where we just go 100 miles an hour and then just disappear for months, right? That's not healthy for any of us. But my point is this. If you're a building leader today and you begin to understand what is it you're trying to create, the type of culture you're trying to create, and you are a believer that, hey, I want to be in classrooms, I want to connect with people. I know I need to be out there visible. And I know there's going to be days like right now. I literally just, I'm in a district right now where somebody had 20 some teachers they had to hire. And then the last 2 weeks, they feel all they've done is interviews, and have completely disappeared. The person said to me, Jimmy, I feel so guilty because I feel like I haven't seen anybody for 2 weeks. I said, listen, the work ebbs and flows. But my question is this. Did you share that with your staff? I believe your staff. I know this person. They are very visible. My feeling was just allow your staff to know and ask for permission or make it clear and just say, hey, I just need to let you know in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be swamped with interviews. Here's why we have this many positions open. We've decided that we're going to schedule them within this 2 week period. I'm sharing that with you because I probably am not going to be the most visible. But if you do need me, here's who you need to go to. They'll get me the information. I hope just give me a couple weeks here to get through this. And then I promise I'll be back out there. So I guess my point is be sure we're clear with people what we're trying to do. Seek permission and say to them, hey, there will be moments that I won't be able to make that connection. If you begin to sense that or feel that, I hope that you would let me know, but I'll continue to do check-ins on a regular basis with our building leadership team to see how they're feeling about things. I want to be this type of leader for you, but I am going to need your help. And I guess the point is how can we be clear with our communicating to our staff? So when we're not in the buildings on a regular routine or in classrooms, then they understand why, if there's a reason for it. So
two things that I think about, and I want to say thanks to Carolyn and to Sue, and Jessica Cabine is on. It's ironic that Jessica Cabine is on when we're talking about what it means to be principled and balanced, and she just came out with a book that specifically talks about that, and it's fantastic if you haven't read it. But the idea that we want to keep those, so thank you, Sue, thank you, Carolyn, thank you for Jessica for being with us today. But the one thing that you said, Jimmy, that kind of brings me back and makes me think a little bit is the idea that people can be, I think if given the two choices of people in your building being upset with you, they can be upset with you for A, not knowing what you're doing, or B, knowing what you're doing, but not agreeing with what you're doing. I think they're going to probably pick B almost every time, because in A, they've got to try to figure out who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. In B, they know exactly who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it. They may not agree with it, but at least they know. And I think that's what we need to do with our group, is understand that you are going to have ebbs and flows to the year. And there are things that are going to happen throughout the course of the year. But at the same time, the more connections that we can make and the more opportunities that we have to make those connections by really being logistical and intentional about what it looks like, doing the voice recording, being clear about what that week is going to look like, knowing and understanding where the hot spots are so you can get out in front of those before they become bigger than they need to be. All of those things come with practice, but at the same time, if you're not willing to reflect on what you've done and you just keep going and going and going and doing, we're never going to get any better, because you don't get a chance to actually see why you do what you do moving forward. So our advice this week is that, think about what your day consists of and how are you making sure that you're intentional with your day, but also reflect on the intention of your day to make sure that you can make tomorrow better than today. And that's what we want you to do. And we can't wait to see you next week. Thank you so much for being with us today. Jimmy, I love you. Thank you so much for you taking time out of your day. I hope you have a great week, and I can't wait to see you guys next week. Take care, everybody. Go Crickets.
I'm going to go lay out later.